You said this morning that all these governments would do whatever it takes to defend and support our families, our business, etc. And I'd like to hear after 3 hours of meeting, some specifics. Counter tariffs are a possibility, and so on, if you could provide some specifics. And then two, let's say you get this deal, CUSMA 2 with the President of the United States. You're going to have to convince a lot of Canadians skeptical of the trustworthiness of the President that no, this time he means it. He'll keep his word this time on CUSMA 2. How will you explain that the President can be trusted when he signs a document with your name on it? Thank you.
Well, first, in terms of doing whatever it takes, there's multiple aspects of that. First, and I won't repeat the whole element of, but it's building the economy and support. Like that's fundamental. It's diversifying our trade relations. Is all that. Secondly, it is helping those sectors that are affected directly by the tariffs with financial support, supporting their workers, reorienting demand for some of their products where that's possible, providing some level of trade protection, if necessary, remissions, other aspects. So there's a variety of things, and we're working through that. We've been doing this and supporting literally tens of thousands of jobs in the 232 sectors, the strategic sectors, steel, aluminum, automobiles, and others, and we'll continue to do that with other sectors that are affected. The third is responding. If these tariffs or other measures come into force, and there's a full range of things that we can do in that regard. We don't need to respond in advance. In fact, I think it would be counterproductive at this stage to respond in advance. But it's important to know what your options are, to have worked it through, to have shared as it affects certain provinces or they have perspectives directly, and be united in that response. And I would say, and premiers obviously speak for themselves, we are united in direction and objective and purpose and seriousness about the response. We are going to support Canadian families, workers, businesses, full stop. Now, to the second part of your question, first, I have to be convinced, we have to be convinced, the team has to be convinced, the premiers have to be convinced that an agreement is worth the paper it's written on, and I think at the core of that is that the agreement recognizes the benefits, the very, very many benefits that trade with Canada brings, not just to Canadians, but to Americans. I mean, it's their self-interest. But it has to recognize, it has to be aligned, has to have provisions that reinforce, of course. But we will know when we see it. And I would say, we go in from Missouri, to use an American expression, on this. With wide eyes, lots of options, rolling up our sleeves, doing the work. We're working on behalf of Canadians, we'll know it when we see it.
We go in from Missouri. Translation, for anyone who doesn't know the phrase, show me, prove it. I don't believe you until I see it with my own eyes. That is the Prime Minister of Canada, on camera, in front of every premier in the country, telling a room full of reporters that he does not trust Donald Trump's signature on a piece of paper, and doing it with a smirk he could barely contain. This wasn't a slip. This was calculated, ice-cold skepticism delivered with a straight face and a punchline, and it instantly became the moment of the entire press conference. As savage as that exchange was, it wasn't the sharpest confrontation of the day. That came from CTV's Maria Sarich, who looked Carney directly in the eye and asked him something almost no reporter ever asks a sitting prime minister to his face. Was that a lie? She was referencing Carney's own earlier public statement that the Gordie Howe Bridge revenue split with the U.S. would only kick in after the bridge's construction debt was fully repaid, a claim that, according to her, didn't match the actual text of the new agreement. It was a direct public accusation of dishonesty aimed squarely at the head of government, live on camera. Carney didn't flinch, but he also didn't have a clean one-line answer. He needed a genuinely lengthy technical explanation to walk it back. He clarified that there are actually two separate agreements stacked on top of each other. The original underlying deal with Michigan, where tolls genuinely don't split until the roughly $6.4 billion debt is repaid, a process he admitted could take about 50 years, and a second parallel agreement about splitting net revenues after operating costs, which is a completely different mechanism that doesn't wait for the debt to clear. He insisted the actual financial impact on Canada is marginal, describing it as less than 5% of the bridge's overall value in present-day terms. He even admitted, almost sheepishly, that his original explanation, on a Sunday morning at Stampede with a cowboy hat on, wasn't as clear as it should have been. That's about as close as a prime minister gets to publicly conceding he muddied his own message on national television. Before the tension could fully land, Ontario Premier Doug Ford jumped in to defend the deal outright, pointing to $300 billion a year in cross-border trade running through that corridor and calling Michigan Ontario's single largest trading partner at $70 billion in two-way commerce. It was a rescue move, Ford effectively absorbing some of the heat aimed at Carney by reframing the entire bridge story around jobs and auto sector survival instead of parsing legal technicalities. All of this happened inside a much bigger story. Just days earlier, the Trump administration announced fresh tariffs set to hit Canada within 30 days, and reporters pressed hard on what Canada would actually do if no deal materializes by the August 19th deadline. Carney's answer left zero ambiguity. Everything's on the table, depending on how the negotiations play out. No hedging, no diplomatic softening, a direct threat of retaliation from the Prime Minister of Canada delivered flatly in front of the entire country's premiers. One reporter went even further, referencing comments from U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, suggesting Washington intends to pursue separate interim deals with Canada and Mexico, rather than one unified trilateral agreement, a textbook divide-and-conquer play. Carney pushed back hard on the framing, revealing that Canada and Mexico are in constant, direct contact behind the scenes, phone calls, visits, coordination, specifically to prevent exactly that kind of split. He even used the moment to publicly thank Mexico for sending 200 firefighters to help battle Canadian wildfires, a small but pointed reminder that while Washington tries to pick Canada and Mexico off one at a time, the two countries are actively strengthening ties with each other instead. Underneath every hostile question was a staging choice that mattered just as much as the answers. Every single premier in the country, from every political party, sitting shoulder to shoulder behind Carney as this played out. Coming out of that same meeting, they announced more than $200 billion in new energy and infrastructure investment, nearly 200,000 new jobs, a new subsea power cable linking Prince Edward Island to the mainland grid, and a fresh push to finally eliminate the interprovincial trade barriers Canada has talked about fixing since before most Canadians were born. This wasn't a government scrambling in crisis mode. This was 13 provinces and territories across every party line standing in lockstep behind one message. Trump wanted Canada to fold quietly and fast. Instead, he got a prime minister openly joking about not trusting his word, a reporter accusing that same prime minister of lying to his face and getting a real answer instead of a dodge, and every single provincial leader in the country standing united behind the response. Whatever comes out of the next 30 days, one thing is now undeniable. Canada isn't negotiating from panic. It's negotiating from a position it built entirely on its own terms. Do you think Carney's skepticism about trusting Trump is smart strategy, or does it risk blowing up any deal before it's even signed? Subscribe to Unbiased Canada, hit like, and let us know in the comments.